Rolling on. It's time for Stand By Me, a film that also came out the same day as One Crazy Summer, August 8th, 1986, with a limited release. It went worldwide, August 22nd. And it's, to me, at least, it's a movie that has been endeared by many, and you probably have seen it while you were in school at some point. It's a 1986 American coming-of-age drama comedy directed by Rob Reiner. Based on the novella The Body by Stephen King, the title is derived from the Ben E. King song of the same name, which plays over the end credits, and sporadically through the movie you'll hear an instrumental version of it. The film tells the story of 4 boys who go on a hike across the countryside during the summer to find the missing body of a dead kid. We're going to go around a panel of 2 and just see what was your initial thoughts to this movie, and then we'll dive into it. So we'll start with you, Paden. What were your initial thoughts on Stand By Me?
I cannot believe I went this long without having seen this movie. This is fucking phenomenal. This is the only movie of this entire group that I think I'm going to keep in my permanent collection. This was fantastic, especially for child actors to have pulled off what they did, the emotions, everything they did there was fantastic. The soundtrack, I am a huge fan of 50s and 60s music, so I loved the entire soundtrack for this. I was a little bummed we didn't actually get to hear Stand By Me until all the way at the frickin' end. That kind of bothered me. But excellent tale, excellent coming-of-age movie. I felt like it was kind of like the Wonder Years, the movie, with the voiceovers and just the way that it was with the kids. But very, very enjoyable. It feels good to finally be singing a praise about a movie tonight. This was great.
Tony, what was your initial reactions to the movie Stand By Me?
I went through a binge watching of movies a couple of years back. I stumbled upon the website Jinni, Jinni, where they recommend movies to you based off of the movies that you've already rated. And I watched almost a movie a day. It was something like 280 movies in a year.
Wow, you movie file.
It ended up being a big disappointment for a lot of the movies, but one of the first ones that I watched was Stand By Me, and that actually is one of the reasons why I kept watching the movies, because I was just like, wow, Stand By Me is fucking great. And if I keep getting recommendations like this, holy shit, I'm going to have so many more movies that I'm going to need to buy. Stand By Me is so much better than I would have ever thought that it would have been back before I had seen it. I had heard stories about the movie and, you know, recommendations and stuff, and it just didn't seem that interesting to me. A bunch of kids go to find a body, I don't care. But there's so much positive stuff to talk about in this movie. The acting, the timing of the movie where everything's set, just it's amazing. I mean, it's not a movie I would recommend to everybody to watch at any time. That's kind of something I'll echo later on, but it's a damn good movie that I could recommend to anybody and go, you will like this movie.
To play on the fact of Stand By Me, like I said, it was released in 1986 with a budget of $8 million, and it grossed at the box office $52 million. And that coming-of-age story, like I said, it plays a lot in a lot of schools. There are certain English classes. I remember taking one in high school where they played this. One of the things that I've noticed about this movie, watching it for, I think, the 3rd time now, preparing for this podcast, there's an all-star cast here that was not an all-star cast at the time.
Oh, when you look at these people as kids, it's hard to believe you got this many future stars.
Yeah, if you look at the cast itself, you have Will Wheaton as Gordy LaChance, who's the lead character, River Phoenix as Chris Chambers, who's his best friend, Corey Feldman, another friend, Teddy Duchamp, Jerry O'Connell, who is definitely unrecognizable in this movie, as Vern.
Badass.
Yeah. And he even makes, all right, let's make fun of the fat kid. All
right.
Right.
Sincerely.
Yeah, sincerely, guys. I haven't found my pennies yet. Kiefer Sutherland as the bully Ace. John Cusack as the cameo appearance here and there as Denny LaChance, Gordy's older brother, and Richard Dreyfuss as Gordy, an adult Gordy. So,
and let's not forget the it man at the time, John Cusack.
Yeah, as Denny, the brother of Gordy. This casting list is just phenomenal. Looking back at it, at the time, everybody's probably like, who the hell are these kids? Like, what are these? Corey Feldman, he's one of the Lost Boys. Okay, I don't even know if Lost Boys was out at this time.
I'm actually trying to look at these guys' filmographies to see. It doesn't look like any of them so far have done anything before this. I didn't get to Corey Feldman yet. No, Corey Feldman's done a lot. He did like Gremlins and Friday the 13th, Fox and the Hound, Goonies.
Yeah.
Not Lost Boys yet. Lost Boys was actually next. He did Goonies, Stand By Me, and then Lost Boys in a row.
Jesus.
What kind of kid has a career like that?
The one that vanishes when he becomes an adult. Corey Feldman probably being the highest billing next to Richard Dreyfuss when it comes to this movie. The cast itself. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Tony, how did you feel about the casting? Do you feel the kids meshed well? Was it believable? And would you change anything, it being a late 80s movie?
That's one of the strongest points in this movie, the casting. They are not only such good actors, but damn, they pull off being friends. One thing that I can really speak volumes to how they pulled off is you get the feeling that these four friends have been friends since they were little kids. They're supposed to be about 12 years old in this movie. Mm-hmm. And just watching the interactions that they have between each other, where they've got these inside jokes, they're picking on each other, but at the same time there's at least one scene for almost everybody where people express that they care about each other. It makes me think about the friendships that I've had from that age and from beyond that and afterward and everything. The reactions between Chris and Gordy. You've got these kids, and they're playing scenes that adults could fuck up. And they're pulling it off so much better than what I've seen in movies with, 60, 70-year-old people that have gone through entire lives and they have all this experience. These teenagers, or whatever they were at the time, 10-year-olds or something, have so much weight to them that...
Especially Vern.
that you believe everything that's happening. I completely believe that Gordy is this insecure kid. I completely believe that Chris is this troubled kid that wants to do better. And then you've got the other people like Kiefer Sutherland, who... So a lot of people might not really be that familiar with him outside of like the 24 series or whatever, but he's playing a hero in those kind of things. And in this movie, he is a despicable person, and you believe that when he pulls his knife out, he could be stabbing one of these kids. The oblivious adults, completely oblivious. They are the quintessential projections of what these kids see them as. They're just there to serve purposes. They're assholes like the junkyard guy. I mean, the casting in this is perfect for it. Every character feels like the actual character.
Paden, what were your thoughts on the casting for Stand By Me?
I actually had no pre-existing knowledge of who these kids were when I watched this movie. I didn't know much at all. I've seen the name around, and of course I knew the song, so the name resonated with me as soon as I saw it. But when I went through it, while I'm watching it, I just kept thinking to myself, holy crap, these kids are freaking amazing actors. And it's funny, I was just talking about dealing with child actors on a set on my Game of Thrones podcast, Sand and Snow, also available on fanboysanonymous.com. We were talking about how they went to this part where there's supposed to be what's called the Children of the Forest. And my friend who had read the books was upset because in the books there's like 100 kids, but in the TV show they only showed one kid. And I was just thinking in my head, man, trying to have like 100 12-year-old kids on set, that would just be such a disaster. It's one thing to have one. You could usually keep one kid under control. But once you get more than two, it's really hard to keep them from going rambunctious or getting ADD ridden or what it is. They had these four kids, and this movie was based on these four kids. There's very little of anybody else. This movie is these four kids, and they carried it so goddamn well. And I think Tony hit the nail perfectly on the head when he said they were doing things that adults can't even do. I mean, they're sitting there, they're smoking cigarettes, they're talking about big life things, what they're going to be doing with their lives. And yeah, they're talking about stupid kid stuff too, like if you can only eat one food for the rest of your life, what do you eat? Pez. Like, yeah. They bounce back and forth so well. They represented being kids and kids becoming adults and being friends. Tony said that too. I not only believe that these guys were friends forever, I felt like part of the gang as well with how intimate the scenes were between them when they're like wrestling with each other or helping each other in a tough situation, like picking leeches off of each other or standing up to the bully. Fantastic choice for who they got in this. It almost is like lightning in a bottle. Like, you'll never be able to get a childhood cast like this again. So super props to that. When the credits rolled at the end of the movie and I saw who all these people were, I was blown away. I was like, holy shit, I know that name. Holy shit, I know that name too. Holy fuck! It just got better and better each one. The only person I recognized in the whole movie, of course, was John Cusack, and I gotta say, I enjoyed his role in this movie much more than I did in One Crazy Summer.
But you saw him for about the same time period.
To build more onto the casting, and I think this attributes to a lot of how good these child actors were, and why most of them went on to have great careers afterwards, is the characters they played. If you look into the children that were in this group of 4 that do this journey, they all have their specific reasons and relatively deep backstories for each of them. Gordy LaChance having the older brother who passed away and feels worthless to his parents. Chris Chambers, a kid that ultimately wants to do right but gets tied up into the wrong stuff. Teddy DeChamp, who has a father who returned home from war, I'm assuming the World War II, who's got post-traumatic war syndrome. I forget what the official name of it is. And he himself is crazy. And then Vern, who is the typical fat kid, but at the same time just wants to fit in and is kind of nervous, timid, and always that guy, that voice of reason, kind of, when the other 3 are let's go do it. Who cares? I think the backstory they put into these 4 kids, with the limited time they had, ultimately improved the story. When it comes to the character building, we talked about the casting, the kids nailed it. Character building wise, Tony, what were your thoughts on that?
I really loved, like you had said, the backstories behind these people, because when you're a kid, you don't really pay attention to a lot of that stuff, and if you do, you kind of put it in the back of your mind. I remember, growing up, and we're around that age, and I'm starting to pay attention to the fact that certain kids are being ignored by their parents, and I'm not, or they act a certain way because that's how their family is, and you're right around that age where that stuff starts really kind of playing into, like, is that kid a bad kid, or is that bad kid that way because of the way he was brought up? And seeing somebody like a Chris Chambers, you look at his backstory, and all you need to know is this is a bad kid who's only bad out of necessity, and he's actually not, a bane on society or anything like that. He was pushed in the wrong direction. And then you look at, I can't remember his name. What was it, Duchamp? Mm-hmm. He is a product of abuse. So, of course, he's going to have this kind of Stockholm syndrome with his dad. He hates his dad. He's constantly talking about, like, his dad's burning off his ear and everything like that. Yet, the minute somebody insults him, it's an insult to him as well. And he has to declare, my dad stormed the beaches of Normandy and all this. That stuff happens all the time with people. And you see your Gordys who are ignored by their families, so that's why he has this mentality that I'm no good, it doesn't matter, I'm just a stupid writer, that kind of a thing. Every character just hits the nail on the head like that. It's amazing that they were able to pull that off in such a short time frame, and a couple of them only get a minute or so here and there to explain their backstories, but it ends up being all that you need to be able to buy into everything that happens in the movie.
Paden, what were your thoughts on the character building?
Not only do they develop these great characters in a typical storytelling sense, but they developed them in a way that you felt you were seeing these characters from a child's point of view. And that goes as a credit to the camera angles they were using, but the way that he felt like his parents were talking to him, and that his brother, when I'm talking about I mean Gordy LaChance, the main one, the way that he was interacting with his brother, and that was the only person who was giving him any looks, and the way that they always took it low. Once again, I remember the scene when he's in the store and the butcher, or whoever you would consider him, the attendant, is cutting meat for him, and he's just talking about how great his brother was, and he's just sitting there, and you come to these low angles, and you see how down he feels just because even when he's miles and miles away from home, the only people that seem to care about is his brother. The only one I felt that was kind of weak was Duchamp. I don't know. I didn't fully buy what was up with him. I have a feeling this whole thing about his dad storming the beach in Normandy, I was hoping that was going to come out to be, like, not true. Like, maybe his dad is just, like, a complete fucking worthless sack of shit, and they were just telling him that so he would feel better about his father. I really don't feel like there was a full conclusion on that one. And for that matter, I feel like there wasn't a full conclusion on some other things, like the conflict between Chambers and his brother's gang. Like, they're just like, this isn't over. We don't forget, and all this other shit. And then, like, they just come back to the town and the movie's over. And that kind of harkens back to what Tony was saying about movies just ending because something happened, rather than the whole thing being concluded. Even when they're talking about the epilogue of what happened to all these characters, they never mentioned the Cobras or whatever the heck their gang name was.
Mm-hmm.
Which those guys were well casted as well. I enjoyed all of them.
One side story that happened to come up throughout this, and I think it's one of the lighter moments of the movie. The boys are sitting around a campfire, and they keep prodding Gordy to tell a story. And I personally love this scene, and I really want to talk about it, is Lardass.
The Legend of Lardass. The
Legend of Lardass, and how everybody in that entire tent threw up blueberries, even though only 4 people were eating blueberries. We'll go around the panel. We'll start with you, Paden. What were your thoughts on the Legend of Lardass?
Well, when it started, I had a feeling this was going to be another one of those scenes, kind of like the alien doing the Minnesota frog dance, like, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, just something that was pointless and dragged out and stupid. And it actually took a while to pick up. You know, there was a good, 3 minutes, I think, where I'm just like, okay, this is going on too long. Where the hell is this going? And by the end, though, it won me. I don't really understand how drinking castor oil and an egg makes you throw up like that, but sure, okay. I'll believe it for this. The most ridiculous thing is just as you pointed out, the 4 people on the stage throw up blueberries, and then the mayor, who was the master of ceremonies, throws up, and I think he says he throws it up on his wife's tits. Yeah. And then the twins threw up on each other. It's just hilarious.
Tony, what were your thoughts on the Legend of Lardass?
Speaking of with the Duchamp thing and trying to project ahead of time whether or not it was going to be true or false what happened, when I first watched this, I was thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be some kind of thing where you hit a real emotional core, and Gordy's trying to tell a story of the ignored kid turns out to win, and then it turns into just he's a kid, so he's still going to turn it into, and he threw up all over the place. It isn't that great. And it's a good twist there that it's not just another emotional segment. It's something that shows he's still a 12-year-old kid. So he might have this talent for writing, and he might be this existential kind of character like all the other ones, where every once in a while there's going to sit down and debate about life, but he's still a kid, so his idea of telling a good story around a campfire is going to be, the fat guy who barfed all over everybody, and then they barfed all over each other, and then it's the whole tent barfing up blueberries, and it wouldn't have the same effect if it didn't have such a big build-up, and it's such a great moment to just sort of sit back, relax, have a little bit of fun with the kids before you get into the next big crisis that's happening. I think that the Legend of Lardass is amazing.
Just one final note on the Legend of Lardass. After Gordy gets done telling the story to the other guys, Teddy immediately goes, well, then what happens? To me, I thought that was a nice hat tip to the people who just aren't happy with what's good enough and keep pushing. And then Gordy goes, I don't know, I guess he just went home or something. And Teddy just responds, well, that ending sucks. How did you guys feel about that little interaction after such an awesome blueberry hurling contest? Tony? Sorry.
What's also good about that, you mentioned how he's one of the people that is not satisfied with enough of that. It's funny how he goes, well, the better ending would have been he turns into somebody who's in the military and he kills people and whatever. A lot of kids do that. They are built a certain way, and for somebody like myself who's really into action movies and superheroes and all that, I sometimes do that with other movies where it's like, well, I want it to keep going and all that. And, we even brought it up earlier. We want to know what happens with the Cobras and stuff. Well, that ending, why can't you add more? And why can't this happen and all that? But I thought it was a really interesting thing that they have Teddy just snap back into that role of supporting what his dad represents to him. because you can take a character like Lardass, and he's the person getting shit upon, and he fights back and he wins it, whatever, but that's not good enough. For somebody like Teddy, who needs to stand up for himself against even his own dad, you have to take it to the violent level after that, because he's got so much pent-up rage that it's not good enough that Lardass makes everybody throw up on each other. He should kill them. And you're kind of worried at that point, like, is Teddy going to grow up to be a mass murderer? Is he going to be that guy who kills somebody because they get into an argument sometime? Because throughout the movie, several different points in it, he's got a short fuse. And he's the one punching Vern for no reason. He's the one that is arguing with the junkyard guy. He's, this violent character. So Vern's an idiot. That's a swell story, sincerely. Chris is the one who's the supportive one. That's great. Keep telling the story. That's awesome. You've got a talent. Gordy is satisfied enough with the story. Teddy's the one who has to take it to a violent level after that. I think that's perfect for the reactions for the people.
Paden, your thoughts on that? The interaction after the story was told?
I don't have anything near as deep as Tony. I think it is kind of ironic that I literally was just talking minutes ago about how dissatisfied I was with not having a conclusion to the Cobras, and even we were talking earlier about the dissatisfaction with the Jaws ending, and then it comes up like that. That's kind of ironic that all comes together like that, but
why did he kill Hooper?
I actually didn't even think there was anything wrong with the ending. I was actually a little taken by surprise when they said that. I was like, oh, that's the end of the story. Everybody threw up on each other. Like, what more do you need to say? And then they went to the bathroom and washed up. Like, the story ends.
One other interesting thing about the movie Stand By Me, it was originally called The Body, which is the book it was based off of Stephen King.
What is a novella?
I don't know. I guess it's novel.
Is it like the female version of a novel?
I think it's like Stephen King only calls his shit that just so he sounds fancy.
I think it's supposed to be something that's a shorter one. It's not quite a full-length novel.
Maybe I could read it then.
More of a collection of short stories or something like that. I don't know if there, people throw terms around all crazy, so who knows.
But it was based off of Stephen King's book, The Body, who Stephen King would later come out and say this was the best adaptation of book to film of his. Would you agree with that statement? I mean, I've seen several Stephen King movies. To me, it shocks me a little bit that this was a Stephen King novel into or novella, into a movie, because to me, Pet Sematary was the best I've ever seen. We'll start with you on this one, Paden. Do you feel that Stephen King was unjust in saying that this was the best transition that he's ever had, book to film?
That's tough. I mean, you definitely gotta say that it's a lot better when Stephen King himself does not direct the movies, because when he does, they're usually pretty freaking bad. I'm looking at you, Langoliers.
Oh, Jesus.
That's really tough to say. Especially when you got movies like Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile. There's so many good Stephen King films. This one's definitely up there, and Rob Reiner is a phenomenal director, and maybe that's why. Maybe he just liked working with Rob Reiner so much. That's what made it amazing. I would have to say Shawshank is number one, though this is a very big contender, and I think maybe the longer this bakes on me, maybe it'll be my favorite. I think maybe he might say that is, if this is a shorter novel, the fact that they were able to take what was a smaller story and extend it into something that felt so big and awesome. Because Shawshank, I have to believe, even in novel form, felt the exact same way it was in the movie. This, I think, is something where they blew it up to something so much better than what it was.
Tony, your thoughts on this being Stephen King's favorite and best adaptation from book to film?
I've never read any Stephen King stories or books, so I've never been able to compare the movies. But Shawshank Redemption is the movie I consider the best movie of all time. And from what I've been told and from what I've read on like Wikipedia and everything like that, it seems like that was a short story that they blew up as well. Oh. So if that's the case, then it'd be tough to argue against Shawshank doing that. But I know another thing that he said he was really into was The Mist. That movie I didn't think was that impressive, but it was.
That movie sucked.
Yeah, it was an interesting concept. So I don't know what's going on in the book in that, but He said that was, a much better take as well. So the three movies outside of Stand By Me that I've seen that I thought were at least interesting concepts and I'd want to know what's going on in the book instead were The Mist, Shawshank, and The Green Mile. So I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to have their own personal preferences, and being the writer of the stories, you've got a different responsibility that you have to take with. If anybody does an adaptation, they're going to change some things around, and it's good that Stephen King has a positive outlook on these kind of things, because you look at somebody like an Alan Moore, he's a complete asshole when it comes to that. He refuses to have anything to do with any of these movies. The Watchmen, oh, terrible. Garbage. I don't want to have my name on this. And V for Vendetta, they ruined everything about it. And I'm sure if they did a shot-by-shot remake of The Killing Joke, he'd call it garbage. So it's nice that Stephen King is able to give credit to those people for building on top of it. And Stand By Me, even if it wasn't his story, I would have to assume that he would like the movie.
Real quick, before we go through, we touched base on it a little bit at the beginning of it. The soundtrack and the music for the film. Seeing as it was based in the 1950s, this is all 1950s classic rock songs. Songs such as, Lollipop, Great Balls of Fire, Yakety Yak, and of course at the end, Stand By Me, even though they tease you through most of the film. How did you guys feel that, given the era that the movie was supposed to be filmed in, how did the music flow? Tony, we'll start with you on this one.
I tend to hate that stuff. I'm not a big fan of 50s culture. I think doo-wop and a lot of the songs that are in the movie and stuff are annoying as hell to listen to. But in this movie, not annoying whatsoever, which is so rare. Lollipop is not a song I like. In the movie, it works so perfectly that I can't have wanted them to change it. Stand By Me, I really like that song, so that's a difference. But 50s culture in general is just something I don't like. But watching this movie, it didn't bother me the slightest bit. Whether you're somebody who's driving an old car, and I'm sure there's some people that watch this movie and they like that because they like that culture, and to them, you go back into a time where I remember it, where you can go to the store and pay $1.50 and get enough meals for 4 people to eat, or Vern's got the stupid comb because it's like, well, we got to take pictures and I'm going to part my hair back like in the 50s and whatever. That culture is annoying to me, and in this movie, it does not hurt it whatsoever. If anything, it just proves how well they did this movie from how much it wasn't annoying.
Paden, your thoughts on the soundtrack?
Fucking phenomenal. I'm the opposite of Tony. I love 50s culture. I grew up listening to my mother's old 45s, so pretty much every single song on the soundtrack was something I grew up with. Stand By Me is hands down my favorite song of the modern era of music. And I mean, like, when you don't count things from, like, before the 1900s. But say, like, 1930s on. Stand By Me is my favorite written song. Every variation of it I've pretty much ever heard, I've absolutely adored. And a lot of these other songs, too. Lollipop is not one of them I like. I'll agree that one is annoying as hell. But then you got, like, favorite. You got, like, just all these great representations of music at the time with Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, the Dell Vikings. That Come Go With Me song was one of my favorite songs from the 50s era as well, so I was happy to hear that one in there. Yakety Yak, a very fun tune. I thought they did a great job picking the soundtrack and really getting you immersed into what was supposed to be the setting of the movie. Because a lot of the times when they do these blasts to the pasts, around this time, or maybe, no, it was maybe about... they're still making it this time, I think, but about 10 years before is when they were doing Happy Days, and they were also trying to hit that 50s culture, and they just missed the mark so much. It just came across as a cheesy parody. This came across genuine and really likable.
What was that song that they were singing? It sounded like it would have been the theme to a TV show or something.
I don't know.
Oh, the Night song, right?
It's like The Heart of a Man or something like that. Like... They're singing it when they're walking around the bridge, and then they call back to it a little bit later.
Yeah, because Vern ends up getting, like, it looks like he has egg on his face when he sings it by himself after, like, an emotional moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That actually was freaking catchy. Like, I found myself humming it through the hallways of my house as I just got done watching it. I'm like, this song's not even that good.
Right. But it's something that would have caught on for a kid, that they would just be all sitting there singing that song, and, you know, Vern would try it up again later on, and nobody wants to do it because it's like, hey, fuck you, fat ass.
Before we go into the final thoughts and our ranking 1 to 10, I can give you some award nominations that were given to this movie. The Best Director for Rob Reiner in 1986 Directors Guild of America. He also was nominated for the 86 Hollywood Foreign Press Association. The picture was nominated for Best Drama in 86 for the Foreign Press Association. And the screenplay itself was also nominated in the Independent Spirit Awards. Going through that and just all this awesomeness that is Stand By Me, and probably by far the best movie of the Four Reel Movie Club we've done tonight, and we may even go into saying so far. Paden, we'll start with you. What are your final thoughts on Stand By Me, and what would you rank it on 1 to 10?
As I said, I had not seen this movie before, and I am so glad that I participated in this month's Four Reel Movie Club, so I got to watch it. It was a lot of give and take because I had to watch One Crazy Summer too, and even rewatching Jaws again was a little bit of a struggle. And this was such a treat. I am so happy to have seen this. As I said, this will probably remain in my collection for years and years to come. I don't know when the next time I'll watch it again, but I definitely will be. So happy that all these kids went on to big things. That all these kids became well-known actors and are probably making very good money for themselves because they knocked it out of the park as kids, and to do that is such a unique thing. I love the cultures in the movie. I love the cinematography in it. I love the conflict that every single character had, both as friends and both with their enemies of the Cobras. So if I had to rank this on a 1 to 10, I almost want to give it a 10. But there are some loose ends, like I said, like the inconclusion to that one storyline with the Cobras. And I even would have liked to have seen more with Duchamp. And it just also wasn't a technically perfect movie because it was shot in the 80s, and we've learned a lot about filmmaking since then. So I have to give this, I would give this a 9. Almost a 9.5 even, but I'm just going to go with a 9.
Sweet. Tony, your final thoughts and the scale 1 to 10.
This is a movie that I'm so glad held up the second time that I was watching it, because so often you watch a movie, it'll be okay or it'll be good. You watch it a second time and you'll start seeing a bunch of flaws that you didn't come across the first time around. This one, if anything, it just reiterated to me that I'm going to have to rewatch this throughout different times in my life just to see if my perspective, viewpoint of it has changed. Because when that happened and I originally saw that was maybe 3 years ago. And 3 years doesn't seem like a huge time, but 3 years can change your outlook. And now that I went through whatever I've gone through over the past couple of years, that's changed my perception of the movie. So I'm going to have to rewatch this, every 5 years or so to see what changes throughout that. And it bangs on all cylinders, which makes it so easy to be able to do that. You've got your humor throughout the movie, like, of course it's the fat kid that drops his burger, and then you've got your emotionally just killing moments, like how Chris, the hero of the freaking movie, does not get a happy ending, and it just tells you that this is life. It doesn't matter if it's the best ending that can possibly happen. The stories don't work out that way. I'd have to go with a 9 again, just the same as Paden did. Of course, it's not an absolutely perfect movie, but nothing's perfect. So I think that this is about as good as you could possibly get. 9 out of 10, sincerely.
Awesome. For those of you sticking around, we'll be going into our next film here on the Four Reel Movie Club, Weekend at Bernie's, one of my personal favorite comedies. For those of you that are listening on the archive sessions at fanboysanonymous.com, make sure you click into the next video below and listen to Weekend at Bernie's.